Well, I met her on a number of occasions because we shared platforms to advocate for conservation and protection of the environment. And that's something that came to Jane later in her life. Her initial fascination based around the chimpanzees in Gombe had produced groundbreaking research, which was astonishing. She didn't have an undergraduate degree, and she later went back to Cambridge and did her PhD there, one of only a handful of people at that point who'd been accepted to take that route into science, if you like. But I think it speaks more of her determination. You know, she got on the boat, she went to Kenya, she rang Leakey, she got a job in the forest. She did everything her way and with enormous amounts of energy. And then when it dawned upon her, as it's dawned upon all of us, that, you know, aside from just generating an understanding of or an admiration for life, such as her chimpanzees, we have a duty to protect it. And she leapt into that with gusto. The Jane Goodall Institute is world renowned. She's used her voice calmly and in a dedicated fashion to speak up for life on Earth against all of the threats that it now faces. And in many ways, you know, Jane has just died on the job, the job that her life became, and that was protecting life on Earth.
Yeah, she had such hope for the natural world in the face of, as you well know, Chris, so many obstacles and such destruction of the state of the natural world that, you know, she travelled more than 300 days a year, you know, spreading the word, talking and trying to educate people. And you talk about when she first started out in the 60s, she only had a secretarial qualification. People laughed when she said she wanted to go and live with wild animals and study them. Yet she discovered something about primates that we take for granted now and, you know, talk about commonplace in schools and, you know, when we go to zoos or see these TV programs that, you know, chimpanzees are social. They're very much linked to humans. All the knowledge we take for granted now. She was the first to discover that, to see it firsthand.
Well, she took a different approach. She immersed herself in their society. She sat on the forest floor in Tanzania as part of that group of chimpanzees. She knew them all as individuals. She knew their personalities. She watched them grow and mature and watched those personalities change. And as a consequence of that, she was able to record things which had probably been glimpsed before, but certainly never documented in the way that she was able to do so. She drew attention to the fact that they were tool users. Up until that point, it was thought that we, humans, were the only tool users. We've subsequently learned that there are other animals too that frequently use tools. But she also revealed the dark side of chimpanzees, a comparison that she drew with the dark side of humanity. She watched the females killing other females young. She witnessed cannibalism. You know, we used to think that chimpanzees were vegetarian, as Jane was, of course, but they are frequently carnivorous as well. So she really opened the door on this animal. And I think in doing so, that close bond that she developed with that group, you know, left a mark in her heart where, you know, she did travel every day. But I imagine that if we'd had the opportunity to ask her why she continued to do that when she was 91, she probably would have said, because I didn't have a choice. Because at this point, the world is seriously imperiled. We have political issues all over the world. We have the ongoing exploitation of fossil fuels, the continuation of animal agriculture, which threaten us. And Jane spoke on all of these issues, but she did it in a way which was different than others. She did it in a very calm, measured, a calculated fashion, and she was able, therefore, to meet her audience gently and really able to get her point across. A remarkable woman, and at a time when we need all of those campaigners, all of those people with voices as powerful as hers on the front line, protecting life. This is a very, very tragic loss.
Yeah, very much so. Again, most people, when they think of Dame Jane Goodall, they think of her work with primates. But as she said, in later life, she talked a lot about the natural world, climate change in particular, which I know is something that you use your platform to talk about and spread the word and education. In your meetings with her on those kind of topics, what kind of conversations did you have? What was she talking to you about? What were her major concerns and the message she wanted to get across?
About meeting that mission. You know, that was it, basically. It was about the urgency and about how we could use our motivation, our love for life, something which, she, Sir David, myself, many others share, but how we could make sure that we modified the way that we delivered our message to get the maximum effect. And there are a portfolio of means of capturing people's attention and drawing them urgently to that need to protect life on Earth. And hers had a particularly, I don't know, beautiful way of delivery. She was a wonderful. She just had that twinkle in her eye. Whenever I saw Jane, and very often I would see her without having the opportunity to speak to her, we'd be at an event, both be trying to do our own thing, but the twinkle in her eye would be there across the whole room, and that spark, that sparkle, burns so bright from those formative experiences that I think she probably had in the African bush. And it's that was probably that love that was the fuel that kept her going so strongly right up until the end of her life. But as I say, at this point in time, we are in deep, deep crisis, and we all have to use our voices to try and affect change as rapidly as possible. And we've just lost a very important voice indeed, and that is a big worry.
Yeah, like you said, she wanted to talk about the urgency, but her message was always one of hope. Like you said, you mentioned yourself, Dame Jane Goodall, Sir David Attenborough, all very different styles of communicating about the natural world and the challenges facing it. Jane always had an optimistic view, which, you yourself, I'm sure, at times is hard for people to see, given what we are now privy to through documentaries like the ones you make and others. But she always had that hope and optimism in her message.
Well, we do have at our disposal an enormous capability to, stop the problem, to repair, restore, reinstate the natural world. We have learned to understand what those problems are. We've identified them. In many cases, rather than focus on the problem, we've also focused on the opportunities that dealing with it, offers us. When it comes to fossil fuel usage, we have alternatives. We have renewables. We have wind. We have solar. We're working on wave. There's real hope there. What's frustrating is that all of those tools, if you like, are in the box, but the world leaders are not taking them out and using them. And that's what we, as advocates for life, those of us who get up in the morning and whose spirits are uplifted by the simple engagement with the song of a bird, that the colour of a leaf, or the tickle of a chimpanzee's finger, have to do at this point. We're not lost, but we're in danger of losing unless we act very quickly. And Jane understood that. That's why she was on the road until she was 91 years old. She couldn't give up, because give up is to lose everything, and we simply can't afford to lose it.